Hello, welcome to episode 129 of the Craft House Magic podcast. My name's Ellie and I'm coming to you from Norwich in Norfolk in the UK, and today is the 20th of August, so welcome everybody. I hope you've all had a lovely crafty week since the last time I've spoken to you, and I'm here to share all the things that I've been making in the last 7 days. So today we have some knitting, some sewing, some weaving, some embroidery, which includes some cross stitch as well. I have a few confessions and a couple of questions from the Ask Me Anything thread. So you can find me on Instagram, Ravelry and Facebook as Craft House Magic, and I have my own website, crafthousemagik.co.uk, where you can find my hand-dyed yarn, handmade project bags, stitch markers, HiyaHiya knitting needles and bag making supplies such as fabrics and waddings and cords and things like that. So we have the summer sock along going on in the Ravelry group at the moment. It can be any adult size sock, be it a shorty sock or a long sock if you like. Come and join in the discussion thread and I'll be drawing prizes at the end of the knit along. And actually the end of the knit along is the end of August, but you still have plenty of time to enter. So do come and join in, or just have a look for some inspiration if you like. So let's get on with the knitting, shall we? So first of all, I just wanted to quickly show you my Fraxinus cowl now that it's been blocked. I think that garter stitch bit at the bottom is all nicely flattened out, so it's not flicking up anymore. And blocking always gives it a nice drape with the merino nylon anyway. And I'll just show you what it looks like on now it's been blocked, just to sort of show you the difference. I didn't sort of block it out too harshly. I just wanted to keep the rib section all nice and not stretch out too much. So there we go. Ta-da! Love that texture up there, absolutely gorgeous. It's not quite so hot today to be wearing cowls, but I will take it off because it is rather warm. So the pattern is by Ysolda Teague and it's called the Fraxinus cowl, and the yarn that I'm using, or I've used, is the She's Here colourway, and it's by Rhichard Devrieze, and that's some lovely yarn that I picked up from Florida, but it's actually a Canadian dyed yarn, so that was lovely. And all finished and blocked and ready to wear when the weather gets a little bit cooler. So the next thing I have to show you is the Way Through the Woods mitts. And these I cast on ages ago. I'd knitted more than this and I ripped it all back because they were too small. So the original pattern says to cast them on using 2.25mm needles, and I decided that I'd do them on 2.5 just to take into account, because my colour work is particularly tight. Found that they were too tight, so I ripped those completely back and left them for ages. I've cast them on using 3mm needles, but 9-inch circulars this time, so I don't have an issue with the edges on the magic loop being a bit tight, because with colour work sometimes that can happen. And the tension is definitely better with the 9-inch circular needle, but I think that it is very slightly on the big side, so I think I might have to go in the middle and go for 2.75mm needles and rip them back yet again. But it is a very cute pattern. You can see that the stitches are a little bit wiggly because it has been unravelled and knitted again. But again, I'm going to have to tear it back again. But I wanted to show you how I got on before I tore it back out. So this pattern has got a Latvian braid all the way around the bottom, and also, oh, it's on that side, some in throughout the work as well, but they are quite a joy to knit. It's just I want to get the tension perfect so that they'll fit. If you look, I can get my thumb really easily into those, and I think that because that's the same number of stitches that goes all the way up the hand, that's going to be quite large when it gets up to this point, so I'd rather just go down to 2.75. I think I was being a bit over ambitious going up to 3mm, but it's a lovely pattern. I was also thinking maybe I should have a white in contrast to this sort of dark teal colour, because I'd seen some people that had used that colour scheme on some pairs that had been already knitted, and they looked really nice. And although I do like the contrast of these two colours, actually for this pattern the white sort of looked like snow in the background, so I may see if I can swap that out. If I'm going to tear them out, I might as well try out a new colour scheme, I suppose. We shall see. I might change my mind. But that's how I've got on with those. So that is all the knitting that I've got to show you this week, because I've been working on a secret project. I've basically been working on the pattern for the Advent wrap, so I'm keeping it a secret until I've completely finished and blocked mine, and then I will give you a sneaky peek if you want to see it. So that is coming free with the Advents that I've been selling on my website, but all those Advents have sold out, I'm afraid. There are some sock sets still for sale on the website, but all the Advents have sold out. So I'll be working on that pattern and getting it to test knitters in the next couple of days, so I'm excited about that. And like I said, when I have finished my version and blocked it out and got all my tassels on, because there's tassels, I will give you a sneak preview on the podcast, so watch out for that. So we've got some sewing now. I'm going to get Barbara to come through and show you what she's wearing today. Thank you very much, Barbara. So Barbara is wearing my latest Holyoke dress. So I have made 2 of these now. This is the Holyoke dress by Cashmerrette Patterns, and Cashmerrette are brilliant because they go up to quite a large size range. And the fabric that I used is from a company called SeaSalt. Now SeaSalt is a British small company that are down in Cornwall, and they normally do clothes, but they do actually sell fabric on their website. And if you go to, I think it's Home and Garden section, there is a section specifically for fabrics. This fabric I bought a couple of months ago, and I'm afraid they haven't got it on the website anymore, but they do have quite a lot of other lovely prints which I'm very tempted by. I mustn't look at it again. Oh dear. The Holyoke dress has got quite a lot of panels. There are 4 panels of the skirt on the front, 4 panels of the top on the front, and then you've got the strap pieces, the facings, and then you've got a similar amount of panels on the back. Let me turn Barbara around. So on the back here we've got 1, 2, 3 panels with obviously the straps as well, and then 4 panels in the skirt, as well as these waistband pieces. So there are a lot of pattern pieces, and it's quite time consuming to put together, but it is a really nice dress. So I'd already made a sort of wearable muslin in this, in a black material with white spots on, which I actually popped some twirls in last week's episode, so 128. You can see those twirls and what I looked like in that dress. And I did make a couple of modifications to the original pattern in that first version. I shortened the bodice slightly. I made the straps an inch longer on both sides, because there's a front and a back piece of the strap. And I did a large bum adjustment on the back of the skirt. So I've basically added an inch of extra fabric on the bum, so that when I actually put it on, after I've sort of assembled most of the dress, I can actually don't have to worry too much about leveling out the skirt, because I've given that little bit of extra inch at the back of the skirt, because I've got quite a big bum. On this second version, I did actually take the excess fabric. I took away the extra inch on each of the strap panels that I put in the last version, just because my bra was showing slightly just under here, and I just thought it'd be better if it covered it completely. So taking away that inch on each, the front and the back strap, it just made it a really nice fit. So I shall pop some twirls of me wearing it in the garden so you can see what it looks like on me. So you can see it looks very similar to my first version, but the difference is that the first version I did use some viscose fabric, so it was very drapey, and this one is in a cotton linen material, which is, it's drapey for a cotton, but it is slightly more substantial material, so it isn't quite so floaty. I stitched the button placket closed. It does give you that option in the pattern, just in case you don't want it to sort of flare open or anything, and I like that bit of sort of security. And because you've got this bit of elastic in the waistband at the back, that cinches it in rather than it being quite a baggy dress. You can get it over your head with that elastic, it's fine. I didn't pattern match the fabric. I could have done, I suppose, but I wanted to get it out of a piece of 3 meters that I had, because SeaSalt sell their fabric in 1 meter and 3 meter pieces, and I did actually buy 2 lots of 3 meters. So I could have used the second piece, but I wanted to keep this just out of the 3 meters so that I could make something else with the other 3 meters. So I'm pleased I did that. I had some buttons in my stash, and they are sort of a sort of grey colour with a mottled white effect, which I just thought that they went really nicely with these. I couldn't find any navy buttons in my stash, but I did think that actually these sort of finish the dress off really nicely. I will get Barbara to take it off so I can show you the inside a bit closer up and the buttons a bit closer up as well. So these are the buttons that I picked. I think that they go really quite nicely, and they're out of my stash as well, which means I didn't have to buy any new ones. And I shall show you the inside of the bodice, because there is a facing on the inside, and I do tend to stitch down my facing if there are facings, because I hate it when they sort of come undone. But that's what it looks like on the inside, and the waistband there is sort of faced as well, so that gets rid of any open seams, sort of neatens it up a little bit. On the waistband here at the back, it says to use a 2 centimeter wide strip of elastic that goes from one side to the other, and it tells you what measurement to cut exactly. It basically says to use 2 centimeters, but I could only get hold of 2.5 centimeters elastic at my local haberdashery, so I picked that up, and it actually fits in really nicely, and you just zigzag stitch over that strip of elastic just to secure it nicely so it doesn't want to sort of wiggle out or anything. I did think about completely lining the bodice, but then I thought, because it's a summery dress, I didn't want it to be too thick and hot at the top here, so I stayed with the facing bit as well. And also I would have used loads more fabric. I don't think I would have got it out of 3 meters. So I think it said that you needed about 3.5, maybe more meters to make this dress, but with my modifications, actually I forgot to say that I did shorten it by 4 inches. Because I'd shortened the dress by 4 inches, I was able to get it out of a 3 meter piece. So that's my dressmaking for this week. And actually I am wearing my penny dress, and the pattern's by Sew Over It, and this fabric is a Lady Mcelroy in the Hydrangea print, and I think, I don't know what episode it was, I will pop it in the description bar down below if you want to see the twirls of me wearing this dress, but it was a few weeks ago that I made this, and I thought, even though I'm not going out anywhere, I'm just going to wear a dress with a half circle skirt on just around the house. It's very comfortable actually. I really like it because this has got an elastic waist as well, and I love an elastic waist. So comfortable. Secret pyjamas, I say. Oh dear. So we have a little bit of a weaving section this week. Now, I am terrible because I started this in December. I cannot believe it's taken me so long to pick it up again. I think I need to have a strategic plan of what crafts I'm going to do every week so I get things done. But I have been working on my bit of Clasp Weft weaving that I started in December, which is absolutely dreadful. You can see this really cool pattern. It's actually woven on a Rhichard Devrieze loom, and I bought the Knitter's loom, which is an Ashford one from Wing and Woolwork, in December as a treat for myself. And I warped it up to make some cushions. So this is what the pattern I chose to use, and it's called Clasp Weft weaving. It's a bit of a mouthful. And I wanted to make some cushions for the lounge, so I've now finished the panel to actually make the cushions. And I've made a couple of meters, well, just over 1 metre actually, I lie. So that's how it looks, and I might have a bit of footage that I can pop in here that I had from December of me doing the clasp weft weaving. I shall see if I can find it. If not, I'm really sorry. I'm hopeful. I should have took some when I was finishing it off. I literally had about 25 centimetres to weave, so I've got this ready to make some cushions for the lounge, and that will be one of my Make 9 because I've been neglecting my non-dressmaking sewing Make 9 list. That might not make sense to everybody, so in January I made a list of Make 9 targets for dressmaking, for embroidery, for sewing that is non-dressmaking, and for knitting as well. And this one was the non-dressmaking sewing section. So I have to get that finished for next week, I think. Well, hopefully anyway. I always get distracted by things. So next is my embroidery section. I've been finishing off things this week. So I showed you 2 weeks ago that I was working... Oh, this is the way up. Not that it makes a lot of difference because you can't see any numbers on it. So I've been working on this a couple of weeks ago, and I didn't get round to fixing it inside the clock mechanism and everything until this weekend. So I had a clock which I'd picked up from a charity shop for about £2 I think, and I've upcycled it by adding some of my own embroidery. 2 episodes ago I showed you what it looked like before, so if you want to see that, see episode 127, but this is what it looks like now. So I've painted the frame a blue colour with some paint that's specially for painting furniture from B&Q. And this pattern is actually a free pattern which is designed by Diane Vingert, and I shall leave links to the video tutorials and the free pattern in the description bar as well. I have changed the colours slightly to add some blues here so that it sort of goes with my living room decor. But I am really pleased with this, how this came out. Let me get a little bit closer to the camera. So the style of embroidery that Diane does is absolutely fantastic, because she actually uses like a number of threads instead of sort of 1 or 2 threads. She tends to use sort of 6 threads or sometimes 12. These flowers here, for instance, they're actually made with 12 strands of thread, which makes them really nice and textured. And it is so much fun making something that it's actually quite quick to make, because you're using so many threads. It's thicker and therefore quicker to build up the little flowers. And also it's much easier to see, because sometimes when you're doing embroidery and you're doing it in the house in not very good light, it's nice to have a thicker thread to be able to see what you're doing. A couple of people said to me about using an eyelet in the centre there to make sure that the fabric didn't sort of fray, but I actually found that the clock mechanism actually clamped either side of that fabric so that you can't even see where the line is or anything, and where I've cut it. If you look really closely there, the mechanism clamps right into that fabric. I did put some fray check on there as well, but I'm so pleased with how that came out. So I have another embroidery project to show you. So I was getting into all this embroidery and sort of finishing things off, and I was looking at a piece of work that I'd already sort of finished and I wanted to make some modifications to. So this is, I should have took a picture of what it looked like before. So this was on my hall wall, and I just put some of this, I think they call it mountain board frames. This was completely white before, but I actually found that the white of this card was much whiter than the frame, and it looked a little bit odd. And I've been meaning to put a little bit of paint on it for ages, so I did a very unprofessional wash of like a beige colour to sort of represent sand on there. And then I added a few more shells onto the picture just to sort of add to it a little bit more. So I shall show you a bit close up. So this is layered silks that have been stitched into a little scene, and I've done some stitches on there to sort of represent little flowers and grasses, and then I've used the texture of the silks to have grasses as well. And then I did add a few, I think I'd put those shells on to start with, but since I've done the sort of watercolour wash of this card bit, I've added these shells and a little starfish, which I picked up from my little tiny shop in Sheringham, so it's kind of a little bit of a memory there as well. And this is a little bit of grass that I pressed inside a book some time ago to sort of give it a little bit of texture on the outside as well, and I think that looks much better. It looked a little bit too plain white without the colour wash on there, so I'm really pleased with how that looks. It wasn't a very professional bit of watercolour, but you know, you've got to have a go, haven't you? So that's that one. And then I was looking in my conservatory. I'd got another frame that I wasn't really happy with how I'd sort of mounted some embroidery. So I had this kit from the quilt show a couple of years ago, and it's a RowanDean embroidery kit, and they tend to do layering of organzas and things, and doing some sort of free stitching, which includes some French knots and different things like that, and that's what it's supposed to look like. I did make some modifications when I originally sewed it, and then I decided I wasn't happy with it, so I've added more to it still. So when I'd stitched it, I actually did very few little French knots up here, and they were really tiny, done with one thread. But I've added some more French knots over the top to bulk them out, so it looks quite different from the original pattern. And also, how I'd mounted it, I've got this scrappy bit of card which I took out. It has been in the bin, this, but I've got it out to show you what it looked like. So I'd mounted it sort of like that. But I took this mounting board off, and then I added some organza around the outside and did some stitching on top of it, because I thought that looked much better. And this frame was white as well on the outside. So my walls tend to be cream anyway, so I thought it'd look better if I painted it blue as well. So I used the same paint as I used on my clock, actually, so you can see how that came out. And it's given it a nice little bit of texture as well, rather than being just a plain sort of cheap looking white frame. So I'm quite pleased how that's come out. The organza I've used is like crystal organza, so it's quite shiny as well, so hopefully it's not too in your face. But that's my modification of that bit of stitchery that I'd done. So that's all the sort of freehand embroidery, but I had got inspired to pick up my cross stitch again, and this is how I'd got on. So I've taken it out of the clip frame that I was using. So since the last time you've seen this, I've stitched this bit across here and this whole little basket of flowers, I think, with some little birds at the top. If I can hold that closer to the camera. There we are. So that is almost the centre panel finished, although I have to do a big massive tree this side, the same as that side. But it is coming along, and I'm getting back into the habit of doing sort of 20 minutes each morning in the daylight. Now I did have a light in over my frame that I've got to hold my embroidery, and it kept swinging around and really getting on my nerves, so I've took it out and I've just set up my frame right by the window so that in the morning I can just sit there in my cosy little area and get on with sort of 20 minutes of stitching every morning, just to kind of relax. I'll show you what the sampler will look like in the end. So that's what it's supposed to look like. It is a vintage kit though, so I don't know whether you'd be able to get hold of it anymore, but someone did message me to say that a US supplier had actually started doing this one again, so you might be able to find it. I'm not sure whether they've got it in the UK yet. I will have a look to see if I can find the link to it. So I've got some confessions to show you now. They may be fabric based. I thought that I need some more plain fabrics to make some skirts and things, so I have picked up some solid materials. I went on to the Rainbow Fabrics website and they had quite a bargain on a couple of materials, so I picked up some blue chambray. I think I got about 3 meters of this, maybe 2 meters, I can't remember, to make a skirt out of. And actually this is a little bit on the thicker side of chambray, it's almost denim. So I'm actually quite pleased it's a little bit thicker. So that one was from Rainbow Fabrics, and I've got 2 more that were from Rainbow Fabrics as well. So I picked up a cotton and linen material from there as well, which I've washed it and it's actually quite a nice texture. It's not too close a weave, so I have the feeling that it's not going to crease too much, hopefully anyway, we shall see. So that has been washed and that's ready to sew. I've got 4 meters of that, so I've got plenty to do a pair of culottes and a skirt, I'm hoping. And then because I was on there, I had a look at the viscose and I saw this grey and white stripe, and I thought that that would be really effective if it was done in panels like on the bias. I'm not quite sure, I haven't found the perfect pattern yet, but I think I've got something in my head about the stripes going in different directions in different panels on like the bodice and the skirt, maybe a half circle skirt, I don't know. But I've got 4 meters of this, so I've got plenty to make a full dress out of it. I was also tempted by the 50% off at Sew Over It, and I picked up a few meters of this pretty elderflower print. Now I think that this is brighter than I anticipated it to be. It actually looks okay on the screen, but when I'm looking at it in front of me, I'm thinking, whoa, that is very, very pink. Maybe it'll look alright once I've made it up. Maybe in a penny dress like this one too. Also, I think it's very slightly transparent as well. It looks as if you might have to line this rather than just wearing it as a single piece of lawn. So this is, you can see how you can see the fabric underneath through it. This is quite a fine cotton lawn, and this is one of the Sew Over It prints that Lisa's designed herself. It is pretty, but it's not quite what I anticipated it to look like. So there we are, that is all my confessions. I do have some questions from the Ask Me Anything thread. So first of all, I have one from Sarah, and she asked, how often do I change my sewing machine needle and my overlocker needles first? There's several parts to the question. So in terms of my regular sewing machine, I probably change the needle, I'd say every sort of day and a half, if I'm doing a full day of sewing for bag making for the shop, for instance. But with my overlocker, I really don't change the needles very often at all. It's only when I can sort of hear that the sound of the needle going into the fabric doesn't sound correct, if that makes sense. It doesn't sound so smooth, it sounds a little bit noisier, and then you need to change the needle on your overlocker. And that's the same for a regular sewing machine as well. They do say that on every project you should change your sewing machine needle, but I don't do that because I find that I'd just be going through hundreds. I do have a little embroidery case where I keep my sewing machine needles. This is a lovely pattern by lovely Emma from Vintage Sewing Box. She didn't design it to go for machine needles, but I've changed mine so that it's got the different types of machine needle in there and some sizes around the bottom, so that I know that if I need to use a different type of needle for a different project, I'll put them in there and I know that I've used them, and just bear in mind that they won't last as long as a fresh needle, if that makes sense. So that's my little organiser for those. So the second part of the question is that, do I pick brand specific needles for the machine, and also for sewing machine feet as well? So normally for feet, for the sewing machine, I tend to pick the ones that go with the machine, just because they tend to be a better quality. In terms of needles, I tend to go for the Schmetz ones. So these are my favourite manufacturer for needles. I do find that some of the manufacturers, I think I've got some here, I don't like. This is a twin needle, but it's still the same make. It's the Lasse ones. I don't like the quality of these, to be honest. I do have a few, but I do find that the Schmetz ones are much better quality. I do have a couple of other questions on the Ask Me Anything thread that I did say that I'd answer this week, but I'm going to leave those till next week now, just because I think this episode's probably going to be quite long with all the different embroidery projects. But I have a question from Kate about my socks, and a question from George about lace charts, so I shall leave those till next week. But thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you'd like to see more, and I shall see you on the next episode. Bye!